Let's start with this. Got a bunch of NASA people here at your facility. They're staying for an extended period of time, hands-on experience with one of your spacecraft. It's not quite the same as a launch and taking it to the moon, but it's pretty exciting, isn't it?
It is, because we have about 50 people from NASA here all this week, and some of them on into next week. And then we had another subset, a group of 15. These were more senior folks, and they came from Marshall Space Flight, and they came from headquarters in DC. And so it seems like things are becoming more serious, certainly.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear they have those kind of resources expended for this visit, though that many people for this length of time, and then astronauts coming as well, right? That it's not just for show, that they want to see what you got.
Well, we have been working really hard this year to prepare for all these visits because they're going to be in here September for several days, twice during the month of September. A lot of folks, and they're doing a lot of testing on our hardware and so forth. And so our staff has worked really hard and really well on putting some neat things together that we're told other companies don't have, and we're significantly further ahead than the other major companies are in trying to provide habitat for Gateway, which is one of the big NASA programs, Gateway. And so we feel good about that we're looked on that way. And in fact, we're being pushed to be more overt in describing ourselves and showing pictures of what we do and not be so secretive. So we're trying to come out of the box, you know.
You're a guy who's heard that before. You play your cards pretty close to the vest.
Yeah.
There's reasons for that.
There are very much so, very, very much so. You have to respect, in the case of aerospace, you have to respect intellectual property, because piracy is alive and well, as we all know, and not necessarily just from China. So you have to be cautious about that. If you are inventing things and some of it is a trade secret where you're not patenting that particular invention, then you have to be especially cautious.
And you are inventing things. You develop technology.
All of the time. Yes,
it's in a spacecraft in another building that we can't show.
Yeah. We have a lot of things that are even procedures that are trade secrets. So it's not just, you know, a hard object of some kind. It can be a process that's a trade secret.
Your competitors, those are the big guys. The big guys.
Yeah, we're a little mouse compared to who we're up against.
Boeing?
Yes.
Lockheed?
Yes.
Sierra Nevada?
Yes.
Am I correct in saying that whatever progress they've made it because they had federal dollars?
Oh, always. Oh, that is the behavior. We're hermaphrodite. We're peculiar because that is the standard way. Is if NASA doesn't fund something, you're not going to be doing something.
So I guess in a sense, NASA is amazed when they see what you've done on your own dime. You are unique in that.
Right, and that characterizes the major aerospace companies. There are other aerospace companies, and I think even Sierra Nevada does fit into the category of using their own money on occasions. They do that, but typically that is not normal. That's not what companies do, and for the most part, all those companies that we just mentioned have had major funding on programs. So major funding. And
you're the funder for this?
Yes.
So NASA wants you to toot your own horn a little bit to get the word out, to raise the profile of the company?
We have been shoved really hard by NASA to get on the stick here and reveal a lot of things through interviews and through pictures and other ways of talking about what it is we're doing. And we're told that we're very far ahead of our competitors in habitat development, which is not a surprise. We should be. Shame on us if we're not. And our team has done some terrific work. So we have some really neat stuff.
So have you had feedback from the people who are here yet as they get hands-on experience with what your spacecraft can do and the features that are on it?
I haven't talked much with the 50 some odd people. I've shaken some hands and I haven't talked with them much. But we did have an all-day session yesterday with a subset of 15 other folks, senior folks, and they were very enthused and surprised by what they saw. And we had a lot of good discussions.
Well, make the pitch. What do you have? What are the advantages that your system has that the other versions do not, that your competitors don't?
One simple way to look at that is that if you look at what the International Space Station would cost today, people would say, well, it would be about $150 billion to build that station, including the transportation of the modules up there to combine everything. And so if we were to look at, well, what if we created the same volume, which is about 950 cubic meters of habitable volume, and what would it cost us to do that? And it turns out per cubic meter, it's 1/48th the cost of what the ISS would cost for the same volume.
So you could duplicate the ISS or make it bigger and better for a fraction of the cost.
Yeah, so expandable systems are not just far safer from a radiation standpoint or a space debris standpoint, but it's the volume that matters. So per cubic meter, you're getting it like 1/48th as a comparison of the cost of a metallic structure. So huge advantage.
That's been your pitch since the beginning, is the fact that there is no space in space. There's no space to work up there. To work, to play, whether it's space tourism, whether it's laboratories, that's the driving force behind your idea.
And believe it or not, George, there are a lot of folks in NASA that just really don't understand the value of the volume. Well, and so we hear questions like, well, so what? What do you do with all that extra room? And they can't conceive of entertainment centers and all kinds of things connected to business, productions, where you might have a series, television series that is ongoing, and you need to have crew there and plenty of camera room and volume, and you don't want to be in a series of tunnels in a architecture such as the ISS that is basically an aggregation of tunnels that come to right angle intersections to each other, and in some places there's only room for one person to go through. So it's like an artery with a lot of plaque in it, because there's so much congestion of all kinds of things around it. But the station's 20 years old, so it has accumulated a lot of stuff, and all that stuff is in your way from a business standpoint. It's difficult. That's not the purpose of the station.
We walked through the demonstration model that you have over there, and even though you've got levels that would not be in the craft that would be in space, I mean, there's a lot of room, and I would imagine the NASA people who are there looking around, they get it, that there's room enough for an entertainment, there's room for an exercise, there's radiation panic room protection areas, and then places where scientific experiments could be done, and 2 bathrooms. And while we on Earth might not think that's a big idea, it's a really big idea up there.
It's huge. It's huge. Toilets are a big problem. They can be a huge problem, and you can sacrifice a mission if you have a toilet problem. It's the end of your mission. So yeah, we have a lot of redundancy in galleys, double toilets. We have double hygiene areas. It's kind of a substitute for showers. And our cruise quarters are double the size of anything that's on the station. They're about 4.5 cubic meters, and the stations are about maybe 1.5, 1 3/4 cubic meters. So we're a huge fan of expandable systems. We're sitting in a structure right now that is theoretically possible to build. So keep in mind that the International Space Station is about 950 cubic meters. And what we're sitting in right now is over 2,000. It's 2,250 cubic meters, what we're sitting in right now. And someday, this kind of structure is going to be launchable, because it's a function of, do you have the rocket power, and do you have the size of the diameter of fairing, where you can pack something in that's 8 meters in diameter, and then this thing would expand to be about, maybe 40 feet in diameter.
What's the name of this one, and what's the reaction when NASA people, astronauts, walk into it and take a look?
This is a favorite exhibit, because this is called the Olympus, and this is a holy cow exhibit, because everybody does it. And for some reason, when you start to walk up these balconies, it starts to grow, and it's an optical illusion, but it starts to expand their imagination.
Make the case of what your expandable systems could do for NASA. Which missions? I mean, there's Artemis, there's Gateway, there's talk about Mars endeavors.
Right.
Could it fill all of those holes?
Absolutely. So it not only has a tremendous bandwidth of different uses in low Earth orbit, about 25 different kinds of uses, like maybe a dormitory would be one, growing food would be two. So there are about 25 of those kinds of uses. And then it definitely can be a lunar depot, a great lunar depot. And you want a serious lunar depot would be something that orbits very frequently, maybe once every 30 minutes around the moon. And so that you have access to it if you're in trouble on the ground.
So lunar depot, that would basically be a home base for whatever is on the lunar surface.
Correct. So that maybe in emergency somebody has to be sent up. You don't want to have to wait a week for it to come around. Our expandable systems can be a lunar base. I think we have something on our website that shows that. We have a scenario of 9 storyboard that has 9 different views of what we call first base. There would be a lunar base, and that storyboard describes how do you get it from Earth to the moon. And of course, if you're going to Mars, you absolutely want the largest systems you can. So the idea of sending somebody in just a small vessel to Mars is lunacy, no pun intended, but it's crazy. You never do that. It's actually, it's the reverse. The further away you are from Mama, from Earth, the more assets and the larger structure you want. It's just the opposite. Instead of thinking that, oh, you're just going to have small structures, which is what the thinking has been for a long time. It's starting to change right now. It's starting to change in the reality of that, but it's really connected to the fact that the thinking has always been about rigid systems, and therefore you're limited to the size of the fairing, and that's as good as it's going to get. And you're launching, you're trying to push a large mass, and so you don't get the efficiency that the expandables have. So the expandables are lighter weight per cubic meter. They're the only way to go to Mars and beyond. It's the future of space travel for the rest of this century.
There's a psychological aspect to it. More space for a long journey like that, good for the mental health of the astronauts who are doing the traveling, but it's also physical. I mean, it's hard to understand this, get your head around, but it's actually safer to have those systems that you're dealing with, and you have plans for radiation shielding inside.
Absolutely. So aside from that, is you don't want the trip to be something you have to endure. Wouldn't you like to spend 6 months getting to Mars, and you say, wait a minute, I'm having so much fun here on station, I don't want to leave yet. You guys go ahead and go on down to the surface. I'll be the next crew down because I'm having a great time. And then you're anxious to have the next 6 months going back to Earth. And that's what you can have as entertainment centers in these kinds of spacecraft that just blow your mind in terms of all the things that you can do, and have all kinds of great fun games to play and virtual reality interaction with different things. And so that's what we see for in the future. And sometimes NASA people make a big deal of windows, and we say, wait a minute, why would you want just a puny window? Wouldn't you want a screen that maybe is 12 by 16 feet or 16 by 20 feet, and it actually is going under your feet because it's part of the hull of the space station that you're in, the spacecraft that you're in. And it's basically a giant TV screen that's connecting to all the cameras on the outside. So you're getting close-ups, any close-up that you want of anything that you see, and it can be right in your face, or it can be in the perspective that you're actually seeing it. So you have a gigantic screen that no window could accomplish. Those are the things we're doing right now, and we have a full-scale structure that NASA folks are going into today, right now, that has large screens that are bendable to the hull of our spacecraft.
Just much more livable and comfortable.
Oh, and yeah, and so you have cruise quarters that have great accommodations in them. that are large, and so it's hard to not oversell expandable systems.
Could you give me your assessment of where these different endeavors stand? Artemis and Gateway, a Mars program. Are they going, or at least two of the three, going to happen? Is NASA going to move forward on those fronts?
So there never has been a space program that has been able to be adopted in its entirety from one president to the next president. So the history has been over the last half century that every president wants to have their own imprimata on their own stamp on whatever their own creation is. And so the struggle right now, Trump no doubt will be, unless something really weird happens, will be reelected, and he will be out of office in 24. And then somebody in 25 is going to take over. So part of the challenge now is not only trying to get the money for Artemis, which is the lunar lander program, but get all those assets built and concluded before 24 is over, before that time is out, so they can actually accomplish the launch and position themselves for future launches and so on. So that's one big target. There are ambitions. You have to take what Trump is saying seriously about Mars, I think. Anytime a president is speaking, you should be taking it pretty serious. And so he's mentioned Mars more than once. And so there is an effort to try to think about that and do something about that. That would be another very major program. Over the long haul, it would dwarf Artemis in expense and effort. It would make Artemis look very small, very puny. And it would have to be multiple phases going to Mars. We would love to be part of that effort and provide the habitats going there, you know, the whole transportation dwelling that everybody's going in. And again, you don't want just 4 or 5 or 6 people going to Mars. You need to have backups from medical standpoint or all kinds of other disciplines, engineering and so on, and lots of assets, because it's whatever you take with you is as good as it's going to get. That's it. Whatever you have, you know, you're not going to send for extra supplies on something. So
Artemis, Gateway, Mars down the road. Are Artemis and Gateway are going to happen? And do you think that by 2024 is a realistic goal?
If they get the money, and that's what we constantly hear. If you get the money, it's going to happen. And so then it's, well, what if you only get part of the money? Well, then you're going to have to kind of band-aid and baling wire something together maybe that was not as complete a picture as you'd hoped for. And that already has started to happen. The original Gateway program was a number of different elements, maybe eight or 9 different elements. And now they're trying to look at, well, maybe we can get by with half that number. We don't know.
In the competition against the big guys, how important is it that you have Beam with already a 3-year successful track record on ISS?
So from a general public standpoint, it's probably forgettable. It's not terribly noteworthy. It happened 3 years ago, and I think.
But it's happening today. It's still
there.
there.
It still exists. Yeah, it's still on board. It's the only privately owned enclosure and habitat that exists on the ISS, and we own that. But from a general public standpoint, I don't think it matters too much. From an engineering standpoint, it's huge, because it's validating the efficacy of all expandable systems, the hull and the way it's made and put together and so on. And so that they have technical readiness levels, TRLs, and that's a TRL 9, which is the highest there is, because it's been occupied. Doesn't get any better than that to be occupied and actually used. And it's a warehouse. It's a mini warehouse, which is serving a good function, because they have there are no garages, there are no closets on the ISS, and that's why it's so congested with everything in these hallways, you know. So it came in really handy.
Seems like it demonstrates that the technology works, and it works well. That would give you a leg up. But as we know from the history of NASA, decisions that are made are not always made on the basis of logic and evidence
Right.
and experience.
Right.
There are other factors involved. So you have to worry that other factors come into play and it might not be a fair playing field.
It's an agency, it's a government agency, and I don't think there is no agency in the United States government that is immune from politics. Every agency is political, and NASA's no different. So it has to cope with politics every day, all the time. And sometimes it sends you in directions that are impractical financially and impractical programmatically. So, politics is, a lot of times it isn't a good thing.
Give me a timetable. If all goes well with this visit, what does that mean? What happens next?
Well, for the next 6 months, there is a period of time here where we are going to be working with NASA to specify the requirements for our station that fit their exact needs and that are something that we can build, that is practical and financially acceptable. And so for the next 6 months, that's our focus.
If you were to get the Gateway, if you were to get Artemis, you'd want both. You want to be involved in both, right?
Well, yeah, the Artemis program is primarily a lunar lander kind of focused program, and Gateway supports Artemis, because Gateway is an orbiting,
Right.
It has a very irregular orbit. It's not just circumnavigating the moon at all. It goes out 75,000 kilometers from the moon and then comes on back, and I think the closest it gets is maybe 1,500 or 2,000 kilometers from the moon is the closest it gets. So it's not a depot, but it is an asset for the lunar lander program.
If NASA awards you a contract to be involved in that, does that affect your hope to eventually have your own ISS, your own space station?
It will certainly help us. We probably would like to join a consortium of companies to embark on lunar activities from a business standpoint, commercial standpoint, and you can't do that alone. So we would like to be part of a consortium doing that, and but it helps give us cachet value in being part of a large NASA program like that. So we welcome this opportunity.
I mean, you do still want to have your own space station.
Oh, we
separate
definitely
from that.
do. We absolutely, definitely do.
You had companies and countries that were ready to sign on. Where does that stand?
Well, a lot of that has been stalled because of different kinds of reasons. The main reason is the lack of transportation. It hasn't changed in 20 years. We don't have a usable commercial system. In fact, we have no transportation system in America at all since the shuttle stopped flying in 2011. But the shuttle never was able to be affordable by the commercial sector. You have to print money to be able to afford the shuttle. That was $1.5 billion every time it launched. So, SpaceX is making a lot of headway on transportation, and hopefully in a year or so, it's getting very, very close.
You put your money where your mouth is. You plunked down a big pile of money to secure 4 flights, right?
I did.
Is that, what was the aim of that? What were you going to do with those flights? And can you still pull that off?
Well, what we learned, unfortunately, was that what we were told was too premature. It was too soon. So we concluded a great contract with SpaceX. They were terrific people to work with. They are terrific people to work with. We like those folks a lot. But it was premature because NASA was not ready. And even though we were told they were ready, they weren't at all.
You were ready to take people on those flights to the ISS.
Yeah, we were ready to get going, but there was still a lot of work to do in terms of structuring everything to start to implement those trips to the station. But NASA wasn't even close to being able to sit down and discuss definitively specifics and being able to conclude with a contract on a lot of different kinds of separate kinds of specifics of what you're going to do, practical things, about who's going to be conducting the training. And it turned out that all kinds of other companies, third parties, were going to have to be involved. And that's a big problem, because now you're not just dealing with NASA, you're dealing with numerous other companies at the same time and their legal departments. And not all of them are going to be talking in the same way. Some could be very difficult, uncooperative, and maybe it's a key thing though that you need, and they're in charge of it. And in terms of using the station, they have dominion over something.
It kind of epitomizes the difference between a government space program and commercial development of space. I mean, they encourage you, all right, well, this is what we want. You go out and did it. You signed a contract, arranged for 4 launches and flights, and you're ready to sign people up to go, and whoa, slow down.
Well, I think the people that I dealt with had good intentions. We had good intentions. The launch provider had good intentions, but there were other people peripheral to us. To the very small few handful in NASA and ourselves that weren't on board, and for their own reasons, they just weren't on board. It wasn't because it was a bad idea. They just weren't. There are an awful lot of chiefs that have a say-so, so it's hard to identify every single one of them and please every single person.
Sum it up for me. Should Bigelow Aerospace win a contract to be a central part of the Gateway project, and will that happen? Should they, and will they?
I think it's logical that what we have to offer is used, and what we've presented to NASA is accepted. I think it's logical. I think it's financially logical, and I think it's structurally logical. We may not have the political horsepower that a Boeing might have, and they are such a huge influential company. It's hard to put us even in the same ballpark at all. We're not in the same game or same ballpark at all. But what we've built and what we can do is very good, and we've demonstrated that by testing, a tremendous amount of testing that nobody else has done, including NASA. And we have launched 3 times vehicles to orbit, 2 thanks to the Russians back in 06 and 07, and then of course the one to station in 2016, thanks to NASA. They gave us that chance. Bill Gerstenmaier, was the head of that project, and thanks to him, we were able to build that spacecraft and have it there today.
You've had to put all your eggs into this basket, all your attention, all your energy. You're totally focused on this, which takes you away from other things that have been on your plate for a long time. You miss it?
The real estate business I do miss. The construction is when it's going well and things are progressing every day. You can see the progress on a daily basis, and you're going to be coming to a conclusion on something that is going to be valuable. And so, yeah, that's rewarding, and that part of it is fun. That part of it I do miss. But the aerospace has been a lot of fun also, even though it's been a struggle. It's basically been a great 20 years that we've had so far.
I meant your other interest that the public knows you for. Esoteric topics.
The unidentified objects that people wonder what are flying around. Sure I do, because it's the epitome of potential that we are barely able to even sniff at, and the magnitude of that is so profound in so many different ways. I can't think of anything that comes close that mankind has even started to approach that even remotely equals the dynamics of that subject. It's beyond belief.
It demonstrates what's possible.
Yeah, and then even beyond that, because we don't even know, we may not even see the bare tip of the iceberg on that, as you know. And so I don't think we even fully realize at all what's possible. We are sniffing at that, and we see signs of that, and we have information about it. And now we have where military pilots are coming forward and talking about it, and other kinds of things going on behind the scenes. And boy, once you've had an introduction to that, it's very, very hard to let go.
You haven't spoken about it really since all the news broke, but I mean, your fingerprints are all over that stuff. You helped make all that happen.
Well, I don't know about that. I think that the future here is what's potentially interesting. If these exposures and these exhibitions that are currently ongoing, especially off the East Coast, and they have been for pretty heavy for the last 5 years. If that gets the right, if they continue and they provide the opportunity for investigation and to create the awareness, not just with the military, but and government folks, but be able to be sanctioned and confirmed as an actual reality. That this phenomena is real. It actually exists, and we're actually achieving a confirmation of sorts, without knowing who, what, or why, or where it's coming from or anything. At least that's a big step that's never happened before.
I just remember when you were first talking about what your inflatable habitats could do, providing space in space where you could work. You could have labs that produce things in zero gravity, materials, drugs, pharmaceuticals and things of that sort that you can't make down here. I mean, that sort of goes, whether we like to say it or not, it goes hand in hand with the two topics sort of go together.
Well, there may be a connection to laboratories in space that we've never really had opportunities to fundamentally push, where you have the effects of creating certain things under a 1G environment, maybe that contaminates and doesn't provide the possibilities that a microgravity environment can produce. We know the physiology certainly changes without doing much of anything. And so researchers now are coming around to really realizing that the human physiology, particularly if you were in space on a second or third generation or on the moon in a 1/6 gravity, is going to significantly change over time. So it's hard to predict what we don't know.
One last question. When the astronauts get here in September, how important is it that they like what they see? I mean, it seems like they'd be great ambassadors and salesmen for you if they see this, hey, this is what we need up there.
They are all different folks and have had different amount of levels of experience, and by and large, most of them are not familiar with expandable systems, and so they have to be orientated to that in a proper way. That it takes time and to answer all the questions and let them spend the kind of time to be familiar with it and to get accustomed to the shapes and the sizes and so forth. And so it's an educational process from us to them.
You're confident they're going to like what they see?
I think given enough effort and time and talking to them, answering their questions and so forth, yes, they will. I think some will immediately resonate right away. Quite a few. I think the majority probably will. There are some diehards that won't, because they're used to the traditional tin can, and so it takes a while to acclimate to that. Well, what happens if you have a tin can that's 1,000 cubic meters, instead of 80 cubic meters? Well, and so it's a whole different way of concepts. What if you have a hull that, in our other topic, you have hulls that are transparent, you see through them, right? But in our case, we have to project a screen on there, a view of something. But if it's like a theater screen size on a theater size hull, and you're only talking about a fraction of the hull, that's what you see in movies. And all that is possible. All that can be done. It is on its way. But to older timers, they have to digest that. I mean, there were people that I saw in lectures that I would give in large auditoriums where I would see smirk on certain faces in the audience when I would talk about SpaceX as a possible real challenger to your launch business. And they thought it was funny as hell, you know? And I'm thinking, my God, where's your thinking here, you know? Are you that limited, you know? What's going on?
You talk to Elon Musk, you communicate on a regular
I don't talk to him. I talk to his president more than anybody, and because she runs the company as the president. Elon is a moving target all the time, so I don't talk to him like I used to at all.
Seems like natural synergy, though. They have launch systems, and you have a place to. You would presumably have a place for them to go. They want to get people into space. You want to give people a place to go when they get up there.
Well, yeah, you would think destination folks need transportation, and transportation need destinations, right? They need to have a location to go to. So that's certainly very logical.